ask that you help us to grow in love and in truth. There are many joys and sorrows that we visited earlier. We pray that you watch over those. We give thanks and say, Amen. So, a couple of small housekeeping matters. There's not enough time for me to talk to you about all the tiny things. So I'm just picking two important ones today. One is that you probably haven't seen too many ministers in scooters. I understand. And most ministers preach standing up. So there's a really strong connection in our minds about preaching and standing. And you know what? I'm pretty sure that the standing is not the most important part of the preaching. So, I'm going to ask you to try a new thing on. And to try on the fact that while I'm sitting, I'm preaching. I've gotten feedback from different people that saw both ways and said to me, Teresa, when you were preaching sitting down in your scooter, that was much better for me because I could tell that you were focused on what you were talking about instead of worrying about standing up and getting tired. Does that make sense? So we're just going to try it. And I'll probably try different things throughout the 2 years. But for now, that's what we're trying. The other thing is, one more important thing about that. So, I know we have this really strong connection between standing and preaching. But in some traditions, sitting down is the posture of highest respect. For example, in Islam, there are traditions in which the imam never stands higher than the Quran when he reads from it. And I've had that experience of a classmate coming from Kazakhstan and bringing the Quran to us and being seated while he read. And that was a holy moment. So as we stretch to try new things, sometimes they're not even all that new. Right? So that's important for us to remember. We can find our holy moments where we choose. And then the other thing is that today I'm going to have a manuscript that's a stack of papers stable. I'm going to ask you to just put that in the background. I'm going to flip through it while I talk, rest it on the stool. It should be fun. Sometimes I might use technology, but today we've got the papers. And those are the housekeeping matters. How are you feeling? Good. All right. The biggest problem with welcoming strangers is that they might be a little strange. Antoinette Tuff had this experience. On August 20th, 2013, a young man armed with an AK-47 walked into elementary school where she was in a peaceful experience and laying down arms. Some of what she said was, "It is going to be all right. Push through the pain. I know what you're feeling. I've been here too." Have you ever had the experience of feeling really understood? The experience that people are in it together. Whether it be a hard time, a happy time, or even an ordinary time, is an essential element of welcoming. It isn't always easy to see someone clearly enough to welcome them fully. But if you see someone that you would like to welcome and you are not sure, I'm going to give you a pro tip now. The question to ask is, what would it take for you to be able to participate fully? This building is barrier-free in a lot of ways. These are ways that make participation possible and even easier for people with disabilities. Maybe it's not perfect, depending on who arrives and what they need, but what you've accomplished is significant. One form of applause in this community is gently rubbing our hands together. When you mark celebration by quiet applause and rubbing your hands together, not only are you keeping quiet reverence in the service, but you are also including people who would otherwise be overwhelmed or overstimulated by traditional applause. Let's do that now for ourselves. Let's celebrate all the ways that you have stretched to welcome others. That's right. You're doing a very good job. Michael Brandon Hill went to the elementary school armed with a weapon, with 500 rounds of ammunition and a promise to kill himself and everyone else in that building. But it didn't happen that way. Instead, he laid down his weapons. Eventually, Antoinette talked him through safely surrendering to police. She was able to broker that peace because everything she said to Hill was sharing of her own experience, affirming that everyone has hard times, and sharing herself with him, even though it was hard, even though it required her to look beyond her fear to his suffering. We probably won't run into too many gunmen. We hope, we trust. But we will meet many people in despair. And many people with broken hearts. One thing you'll learn about me over time is that I enjoy my family very much. My dad, Victor, my mom, Anna, my brother, DJ, and his 5 kids, Brenna, Luke, Landon, Sienna, and Cameron. I found myself learning about being welcoming when I was younger, and I had a friend named Annie. She grew up in foster care, and as an adult, didn't have family to talk about. So, whenever I would bring up family in conversation, I was mostly trying to be interested and friendly. She would answer in a soft, embarrassed way, like a friend who's running low on cash until payday and can't really afford to go out so much. What to me was an ordinary way of relating underscored to her something important that she was missing. I was able to stop talking about family and move on to our shared interests by making a conscious effort. Within this congregation and in our everyday lives, we have more welcome to offer. But how do we actually do it? We must hold this question with a spirit of and 20% Latinas or Latinos of any race. We have a question about this to observe and gently turn over in our hands. What kind of welcome would it take to cause this church to shift, to reflect the city we live in? I live here in Portland, but you live mostly here probably. And so that's a good question for us. Is it a possible goal? Is it desirable? One thing that's really impressive about this congregation is your willingness to learn and grow. I know that you continuously consider what it means to reach out to the community of which you're a part. I ask these additional questions as windows that we can look through to a possible future. If we were to imagine a Sunday 3 years from now, and the faces of the people attending services were 4/5 white and 1/5 Latino or Latino, what would we have done to arrive at that result? It is something for us to think about. When we talk about the invitation we extend to the city of Salem, it is a larger kind of invitation. In order to think and talk about it meaningfully, we have to focus on it with intention. We have to think about what practices will serve this vision. What about invitations on an individual level, though? My friend David talks about invitations that honor us the moment we receive them. He told me about the time that a friend of his asked him to give her away at her wedding. He felt immediately honored by that invitation. When we talk about inviting people to church, this is the kind of context we offer. We honor the relationship we have with them by sharing, in fact, a beautiful, human, encouraging experience. We share it because we hold it valuable. If it doesn't build you up, if it doesn't bring you joy, of course, you don't invite people. But if you like it, if you love it, you honor people by sharing with them the goodness that you know about. There are so many good things that can be shared. Some good things I know about are the hamburgers at a small place called Yakuza in Portland. Ramona, who cuts my hair at Supercuts in Eastport Plaza, and the book Wonder by R.J. Palacio. I also know of a certain spiritual community that encourages a free and responsible search for truth and practices relationships over dogma. It's lovely. If you weren't already here, I would invite you. One more thing about invitations on an individual level. They are gifts. And either yes or no must both be acceptable answers. If one of the reasons that you don't invite people to come here to share this community with you is that they might say no, I invite you to loosen your grip on that result. The point isn't to drag people to meetings. Instead, remember, you get to share what you love with the people that you love. In Lucia Santana's story, the people did not welcome Lucia. The people were afraid of the ways that Lucia was different. They did not say hello to her. They did not offer to be her friend. In fact, they said mean things about her. Lucia plays with otters. Lucia smells like fish hats. Where does welcome come from anyway? We've talked about what it is and some ways of offering from Zen Buddhism is this: living beings are numberless. I vow to help them all to cross over the sea of suffering, the sea of birth and death. The Bodhisattva guide vows to put the numberless living beings in his or her own boat. It is this kind of welcome of which we are capable. It is an intention to include another in an experience of belonging, love, and freedom. While we offer freedom to others, we provide freedom for ourselves. There's another famous invitation in the Bible from Jesus. Are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. Some of you are Oregon gardeners. You feel connected to aliveness when you are working with earth and plants. The work you do has a lot to do with unforced rhythms. You tend to care for your garden, and over time, you see results. One way we can see welcome is parallel to this. We create a space for growth. We tend to the places where it may yield fruit. But we have to wait for things to bloom in their own time. People bloom in their own time. They participate in their own time. People accept or decline invitations in their own time. Though we may feel impatient for results, welcome occurs when we follow the flow of natural time. The rune yarrow reminds us of this. Runes are touchstones from Germanic cultures. They hold reminders and symbols of wisdom. Yarrow symbolizes harvest, or the fertile season. Yarrow tells this story of a farmer who was eager to hurry along the harvest. He went out at night and pulled on a shoot. You can imagine his urgency did not bring the harvest sooner. Remember that welcome is the opposite of already knowing the result. This is a central aspect of welcome. We need patience for the natural time of welcome. But the thing that we are inviting people to is to participate with us, to be in relationship with us. In this way, welcome is something that we offer from ourselves. Relationships vary, of course, in intimacy, in strength, and in nature. They are integral threads of the practice of Unitarian Universalism. When we describe our faith movement as covenantal, we are saying that the way we act together, the way we are together, is more important than the way we talk about our faith or the way we describe our beliefs. Welcome in this context means that we each, as individuals, take seriously the possibility of inviting others to share our experiences and to try to understand theirs without judgment. Theologian Rebecca Parker, the former president of Star King School for the Ministry, calls these relationships, these connections, freely chosen and life-sustaining interdependence. This is why it matters. welcome, it will be something that gives you life, not simply something you give away. Welcome has mutual benefit for the giver and receiver. Let's get back to Lucia. She didn't return the unkindness of villagers, but she didn't stay either. She walked out of the village without looking back. And the river, curled up in her hair, went with her. Only then did the villagers realize how much the river loved Lucia. They kicked at the dry stones at the edge of the river. They shouted and complained about the drought. But it was a little too late. Eventually, a group of villagers, including children, walked and walked and walked until they arrived at the iguana cave where Lucia had taken refuge. Everyone was quiet because they were ashamed of their behavior. Finally, the children got up courage. They called out, "Lucia, we are sorry for our behavior. Please forgive us. Please bring back the river." And she thought about the times that she had said hello and no one had returned her greeting. She thought about the times that she went out to see the sun and no one would join her. But she saw that they were truly sorry. And so she brought back the river. There are lots of stories I could have told today. But the story of Lucia Centeno reminds me of a very specific aspect of welcome. We give it to others, and we receive the generosity of it ourselves. We stretch to welcome. We invite to welcome. We embody welcome. As we practice this, we create a new future in which invitation and welcome are gifts